Hey, everybody, welcome to the Jay Young Show. Man, this is an exciting episode. I love bringing people on to teach people or to kind of, let people know what's going on in the world. I like to interview individuals that have extraordinary experiences, and Chart Westcott definitely does. I want to interview him. I want you to learn more about what he does, how he does it, what makes him think, because at some point, I like that 16 to 22-year-old that people, start watching different videos. I want you to watch my video and learn something from Chart. There's going to be a takeaway or two. We're going to have an incredible story at the end. I'm going to save it until the end, but there's a great story that we're going to learn later on. But right now, Chart Westcott, welcome to the Jay Young Show.
Jay, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me on, and thank you for your partnership over the years.
Absolutely. I've always enjoyed it. I love you and your family. Before we get started, I want to know more about Ikarian. I want to know more about biotech and tell me something about your background real quick, or your family background. Just tell us something about yourself so we get to know that.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not so dissimilar to yourself, where I come from a family of, entrepreneurs and risk takers and, people who believe that, money is something that you are obligated to use for the betterment of, yourself and your community, and certainly human civilization as well. We as a family, we're all originally from Mississippi. Both my parents are. I grew up in Dallas, and growing up there and in the shadow of my father, who was, an incredible entrepreneur, had an unbelievable career, won the Horatio Alger Award. That was always a challenge. I mean, you look at something like that and you're like, well, okay, what do I do? and it can be difficult. But, I had a psychological desire to succeed outside the family that I just was not going to give up until I had that sort of success. And the vehicle for that success was Ikarian Capital. That was, my family had never been in the investment business. We'd never been in the hedge fund business. We'd never had any involvement with it. And so I got started there with a couple partners, one of whom is a man named Vikram Khanna, who has just shown that he has once in a generation investing talent in biotech. So I was fortunate to, surround myself with some great people, and really, it was finding, him that really was the key to our success.
Gotcha. So how long ago was that? Well, hey, quick, me and your dad shared basketball tickets, and we were sitting right next to each other back, I don't know how long ago, but it was a long time ago. And so I've known you and your family for a great time. A lot of respect for him and all the things that he's done, not only money wise, but also giving back. And that's the one thing that I really do, have a lot of respect for the Westcott family is, hey, it's not all about us. It's about community and growing and helping other people. So that's awesome. Love that.
We all have to live together.
Yeah.
We have to figure out a way to do that.
Man,
it can feel hard at times, but we have to do it.
Oh my goodness. But anyway, we got old stories. Let's not go into those. That would definitely derail the whole situation here and what we're trying to accomplish. But so tell me about, so you find this guy, and I believe you started in 2000.
15, 16, roughly.
Yeah.
16.
So why biotech, man? Doesn't that sound like it's really risky or high risk, high reward?
We'll get Darren Blanton in here to talk to you for a couple hours. So when I was and this is one of those things, like you got to just follow your nose was a saying my dad had a lot. You got to follow your nose. And I always thought that was interesting because the nose doesn't really have a choice, right? It smells what it smells. And, some things smell good, some things smell bad. If it smells good, maybe follow it a little bit. And so when I was in the 5th or 6th grade in middle school, we had a speaker come to our school and talk about, some of the revolutionary technologies such as stem cell, that were being developed. And so you got to think this is 1998, 97, I'm a young guy, 12, 13 years old. And I hear this and what he said, the phrase he said that stuck with me, and I used it in sales pitches for biotech, 20 years later. And it was this. He said the 20th century was a century of physics and chemistry. We invented the computer. We went to the moon, nuclear weapons, all this stuff. The 21st century is going to be the century of biology.
Wow.
And that stuck with me. And, my brother, was really more of a traditional sort of tech venture capitalist. And in that regard, he went down that route. And I said, well, I'm gonna go down the other route. I'm going to look at biotech. And I very quickly found out, another thing my dad, harped on us a lot is, you got to know yourself. And I'm not a scientist. So if you want to be on here and talk about a lot of deep, fun science, I can get into it a little bit, but once you get past a certain level, I really, I'm useless. And so I knew I needed to partner with people that understood the space, better than I would, and have that kind of technical training. And so, that was sort of the genesis of why biotech. And what's crazy about the space is there's so much innovation going on. There's so much money being thrown at curing, all these ailments that have, been terrible for humanity for a very long time. And it's sort of an unloved endeavor. Congress and the executive branch, drug pricing is always the big, enemy. And then people hate on, quote, big pharma. And there's some justification for some of it, but I think the story of all these unknown, people who are, risking all of this money and time to develop cures. And yes, they are trying to develop cures. Folks who talk about that. Oh, they don't want to develop the cure for cancer. Like, are you kidding me? Like, they cured. We cured hepatitis C with Harvoni. A couple right when I was getting started with the hedge fund, actually, and that company made $9 billion when they sold. So the idea that we're not interested in curing diseases out there, that somehow there's corruption throughout the entire pharmaceutical industry, it gets me a little hot, because these are people who deserve our respect and thanks most of the time. Not to say there aren't bad actors. Like any industry, you're going to have plenty of them, and there are bad incentives in places. And incentives are everything, Jay. I think that. Anyone in business really understands it, and we have some bad incentives in a lot of our systems. So anyway, that was a long-winded answer about why biotech.
Yeah, no, I understand. I mean, it seems like if you're you raise a fund, so you have a fund that people invest in. Is there one fund or many funds, or fund a year, one fund?
Just one. Yeah, just one master fund. So we were offshore as well, and that's kind of a story in and of itself, really. We weren't sure if we had enough money to go offshore and bring in offshore money, and so we took a risk and paid the $120,000 or whatever it takes to open an offshore fund, and lo and behold, it worked out. The offshore fund became as big almost as the onshore after a while. But yeah, just one fund, and 90% public equities. 10% we do invest in privates, and we've done some interesting work there as well. But 90% public equities.
Okay, I didn't know that. I thought maybe you found companies that were starting up or whatever, and you invested 10 million, 20, whatever in their fund. But you're doing equities.
So let me take you through, if you don't mind, the biotech sort of ecosystem.
I'm curious.
Sure. Folks may not sort of be aware of how all this works. And so let me back up. It's the most interesting part of the public markets, because the valuation of a biotech company really has nothing to do with its earnings, nothing whatsoever, nothing to do with revenues, because they don't have any.
Right.
They don't have any. It's what people value, their expectations of the science of these drugs, how they think that's going to perform based on the existing data about the drug or previous drugs or similar drugs, as well as the underlying science. So you can imagine Mr. Market has a great deal of difficulty of pricing science, the value of science. It can be very difficult. So these drugs come out of, a university is sort of where they get their start. And then, the university might fund a little more research. Some of the nonprofits might, and then it is eventually licensed either by the creator or some, budding sort of drug developer, and they, throw $1 million at it and, 2 million, do some more research. And then if that goes well, they gear up for what's known as phase 1, which is a safety trial with the FDA. And at that point, they're generally speaking still private. If they have that, they get some data, and the phase 1 is just healthy human volunteers. So people who don't have the underlying disease or condition. There's exceptions, but so then these phase 1, trial, they're looking at safety, but they're also looking at, the biochemistry, what the drug's doing in the body. And then from there, it would go on to phase 2. It's somewhere around phase 2 where they're doing their first proof of concept study that these companies go public. And so they will, you can imagine, you still don't have much, right? I mean, all you've got is, some human data, some animal data, and sort of the lab data, and the underlying science, and then the credibility of the people who are involved in supporting this thing. And it is based on those factors that you get, an IPO, and the bankers absolutely love it. It is banker bonanza. I mean, It's the best thing they've ever heard of. I can take a company public with no revenues and people will support the market cap. Are you kidding me? I mean, so you get, again, incentives matter. And so you get a lot of, bad apples. There's a lot of fraud in biotech. There just is. And there's a lot of bad science, bad CEOs, kind of the whole shebang. So, it's from there, you got to go to a phase 3 study, which that's very expensive. Now you're talking about trials, typically costing lots and lots of money. And then from there, you go through the final is, the FDA stamp of approval. In general, 99% of the time, companies are not owned by big pharma until they get approved. It's very rare for you to have takeouts sort of before the data is out there, because big pharma, they're sitting on money. So, they're trying to replace their pipeline. So they're happy to pay up once a drug has been, gotten a little further down the road and it's not so risky. But that initial tranche, that's just money that people are setting on fire to figure out if drugs work or not.
Right. That's amazing. I mean, how many different, so your fund, do you have 5, 10, 100? How many different, so Ikarian, how many investments do y'all have?
Yeah, so at any given time, we've got, and again, I actually don't work there anymore because I retired as COO, but I still obviously retain a lot of economic interest. But we would typically have somewhere around 100 positions or so, long and short. And the short side, as I alluded to, is very important. And it's really a differentiated way in which we have generated some alpha over the years is on the short side.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like that. I mean, I can see how that would, because I know there's a lot of risk in those kind of technologies, whether or not it be, somebody that hides information, or they're not upfront, whatever. And then I'm playing golf in Cabo with a guy, and it's a company here in Dallas, and I heard about him, and all of a sudden I meet the CEO, and he's on his private jet with a brand new house he bought in Cabo, but it's a company that just went public, and man, it's just, he killed it. I mean, because the technology that he had really did well. But then again, there's a lot of risk in those, and I know there's stocks out there that a penny, 5 cents, or 10, and I mean they double, and man, that is. I mean, what are the odds of, all your big, Apples or Amazons or things like that doubling, and these could 10x. What's the biggest return you've seen on one stock in your career?
Not to harp on the short side a little bit, but just it's interesting. I saw a company go from $2 billion in market cap to being worth about $50 million in one day.
One day,
$2 billion of market cap evaporated.
Oh my goodness!
It was their phase 3 trial, and they failed. And wow. We were on the short side on that one, but it can happen. And then we've been on the other side where we've gotten our face blown off by by positions.
Yeah.
You know,
We don't talk about those. We don't talk about those.
No, we don't. No, you know, I like to talk about them just because I always like to. I don't want people to get the impression that we're always winning.
Yeah, no, I understand. Hey, we're the old.
You got to be honest about things.
We're the old business. We understand how that.
Oh well, no, yeah, plenty of dry wells, right?
I can talk about the biggest discovery and the biggest, but hey, there's also some of the other side. And hey, you know what? It's a risk, and you don't have to do it. I mean, we tell investors all the time, hey, if this isn't for you, please don't do it, because we look at this. We're trying to mitigate as much risk as we can based on information, and we kind of go from there. What were you going to say?
One of my dad's great saying was, if you're over 21 years old and you wear long pants, you need to be taking some risk. And, so when people remind me something's risky, I say, I'm over 21 years old and I wear long pants.
Oh, Carl, man. Yeah. Hey, good. Well, okay. Well, that's great. And is there anything else about the business side of biotech you want to talk about, or is there anything else? I do have a few more things I want to talk about. Is there anything
this is my only message to the world and your people is just be gentle with pharma. I mean, this is something that it's an American industry. 90% of drug development happens, in companies owned by the United States of America, inside the United States. And so we need to be gentle with this ecosystem because, it was not easily constructed, and once destroyed will be difficult to rebuild. So just be gentle with it.
Yeah. Gotcha. So why do you live in Puerto Rico? Is it the taxes? Is it the lifestyle? What was your biggest reason?
Combination of three things. El primero es que quisiera mejorar mi español. I want to get better in my Spanish.
Okay.
And I've been struggling to become fluent for years, and I just never seem to been able to devote enough time to it. But down here, I really have a lot more opportunity. Two, the lifestyle. I love to offshore fish. I love to be on the water. There's no oceans in Texas, unfortunately, in Dallas rather. And so that was a big one. And then the third one is absolutely the taxes. And I have no shame in saying that. And I think it's odd that there's some sort of guilt around keeping what you own, as though that's somehow wrong. And so I totally disagree with that position. And I'm seeing myself what's happening here. And when you move, a lot of very, very strong-willed, hard-charging, intelligent entrepreneurs, to one location. And I mean, it's unequivocal. We're making this place better, which is not to say that it needed to be fixed. It doesn't. It's a great place. It was great before we got here. It'll be great after we leave. Right. But if we leave at all. But the reality is that we are making it better. And I see it in every day in things that people are doing. Some community leaders have really taken it under their wing to fix a local hospital here that is totally not performing well and has harmed people, to be honest. And so there's a lot of good being done, but it's the combination of wanting to be better in my Spanish, loving the lifestyle of the Caribbean, the tropics, and then of course the taxes.
Yeah, got you. So are you near Dorado with Mr. Malden?
I don't have any kids yet, though I'm planning on working on that pretty shortly. And so we are not out in Dorado. I live in San Juan. So if I look out, literally if I look over my shoulder here, I'm looking directly at the ocean. I can actually see a sea turtle there. That's funny. And so I'm here in San Juan, and the other reason I did that, as opposed to going out to Dorado, is the Spanish. No offense to everybody in Dorado, but once you get inside the Ritz-Carlton gates, there it isn't not a lot of Spanish going on.
Yeah. I got one more question before we finish. We get too far away from the subject, but any big innovations, biotech, anything big that you see on the horizon? Is there a stock out there that you're seeing that it's really close that I can put money in and get a 10x here in the next couple of months? No, I'm just kidding. But there's a really good Texas story going on with a company called Crossbridge Bio right now. They're very early. They're not in humans yet. They're still in the clinic.
But I really like the team. I really like the people involved. And I really like the technology, which is sort of a subvariant of immunotherapy, which has been used successfully to target, a lot of different cancers. And I think these guys have an impressive idea, and the people involved are very impressive. So that's what I'm personally invested in. And a way for folks to like kind of track what I'm up to is if you go to my Instagram page, I have a little just kind of sign up form, and it's all deals that I do myself. It's for accredited investors only. And you just click that and you'll get my deal flow. And, it's everything I do. It's something I'm putting my own money into. So, you never have to worry about that. And,
That's great. Okay. Chart Westcott on Instagram.
Yeah.
We're not finishing up. I'm just saying that's something that if somebody
you're
wants
an accredited investor, that's how you can get my deal flow.
Yeah. Chart Westcott on Instagram. Great. Okay. So the next, so lifestyle San Juan, it's got to be great. It's got to be, there's a lot more. How long have you been there, and how many Americans are moving in down there? There's so many of my friends. Ben Patton, it's his birthday today. Happy birthday, Ben. He lives down there. There's other people that I know that have moved down there from Tiger 21 community. How's it grown since you've been down there?
I've been down since September of 2022. And that was sort of, I would say, the crest of, valuations and such down here, where, things were still very rich. Real estate was absurdly expensive, and it's come down quite a bit since then. Which is not to say people aren't still moving here. They are, but some folks move out too, and so there is a sort of community though that is being built of people who, are never leaving. And it's about 10,000 of us, I believe, is the number. So it's not as many as you might perhaps think. And when I say of us, I'm talking about people who have gotten the Act 60 decree from the Puerto Rican government. And so 10,000 out of a population of 3.5 million, that's not a great amount. So I with due respect to, the folks that are sort of blaming us for all of the problems on the island, it's pretty remarkable that 10,000 people could cause so many problems.
Yeah, I know John Malden, who's our economic advisor, as you know, I know that I'm not sure if everybody else knows, but he lives there, and he's proud of it and loves it, loves the community, loves the lifestyle, loves everything right now. And he just was talking about, hey, I save taxes, and I'm afraid of the federal deficit. I don't know how the federal deficit is going to affect Puerto Rico, or if it will.
Look, if you're an entrepreneur right now, or you're, somebody who's, managing wealth, like, you have huge counterparty risk in the federal government. Yeah. Like the odds are they're after you, that they're after what you're trying to build, what you're trying to create. And it's, I had enough of it a long time ago. And I know a lot of people have had enough of it a long time ago. And it's, there's the concept of what we owe as, as citizens and as a civilization, and what our obligations are. And, the way I think of Puerto Rico is, they've created a different set of obligations under which, I'm supposed to honor. And I do that. I follow it to the absolute letter. But the idea that a government that recklessly spends, that, gets involved in misadventures abroad, and then runs up massive deficits, borrowing to do it, and then continues to grow in its spending, that somehow I am obligated to fund that, it's ludicrous. Yeah. It's ludicrous. And we as citizens should not be tolerating it. And it's just going to end in financial ruin. Sadly, for, as the inflation has been doing, like, for the people who can least afford it. But that's where we are. Yeah.
Wow. Is it like a 4% tax? Is that what it is?
So it depends on what you're doing. If you are exporting a service to the United States of America, so say I'm exporting investment management services, or I'm exporting consulting, anything you're exporting to the U.S., it's 4%. If I open a business here, I opened a restaurant, I'm paying Puerto Rican taxes on that. Puerto Rican tax rates, no different than any other Puerto Rican. So the only real differentiation is in the export of product to the United States, and then also capital gains. We don't pay any capital gains on Puerto Rican source income. Now, so in your case, it would be drilling oil wells. That's obviously not Puerto Rican source income. So that would not qualify. It would be difficult to figure that out. But you would structure it in such a way where the management fees, for example, you're paid from your funds, those would only be taxed at 4%.
Okay. What does Puerto Rico pay? What Puerto Rican? If I open a restaurant down there and I'm making money, what is it?
They're high.
They're high.
The taxes are high compared to the mainland. It's the highest tax bracket, excuse me, in Puerto Rico starts at about $60,000, and it's 35%.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't want to go down there. I don't want to go down there and create a business. I want to have my businesses, I guess, in the U.S. and bring money in or something and pay 4% or.
They've got a lot of work to do, Jay. I mean, if this were a state, just to run a couple of statistics at you, number one, it would be last in terms of economic freedom, last.
Wow.
And that's just a number you get from the Fraser Institute or Economic Freedom Foundation. There's also a couple think tanks down here, Instituto Libertad Económica. So I mean, there's a few, and they all do this kind of work, and it shows that there's just a ton of red tape here. It's a bureaucracy. It's a nightmare in some ways.
Yeah.
The banking system, horribly antiquated, and located apart from sort of the rest of the U.S. banking regime and federal regulations. So it's very backwards. And so there's some work to be done here. And if it were a state, it would per capita be about 2/3 the per capita GDP of Mississippi, which is the poorest state in the union, of course. Wow. 55% of the residents of the island are on some form of federal assistance.
Okay.
And so the truth, if we want to talk about truth, we as Americans, our federal government has not treated Puerto Rico the way that we should have, and there are continuing things that are continuing to happen that are very disheartening. That they're not free market. I would direct your attention to the Jones Act. The Jones Act. If you just say the word Jones Act, any Puerto Rican gets their blood up. And, it's the one thing that I think everyone on the island agrees with is that the Jones Act is an absolute disaster. And if you're not familiar, essentially what it does, it says that any intra-U.S. commerce must be done on a U.S. flag ship with a U.S. flag crew. Well, that sounds nice, but what it also means is that everything that comes here is going to cost 30 to 35% more than it should.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
And so we're doing that. We're doing that to some of the poorest people that carry U.S. passports that are U.S. citizens.
Wow.
That's wrong.
Gotcha.
The federal government has a lot to account for in the way that it has treated Puerto Rico.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I thought about coming back. I went to kindergarten in Puerto Rico. My dad was in the Air Force, so a little bit southwest of you on the western shore. I went to kindergarten in Puerto Rico, but I don't remember very much about it. But it's been a few years.
It's hard to picture you as a kindergarten. Were you drilling for oil yet?
No, my dad was in the Air Force. We're on the base, and I remember some of it. I could speak Spanish to our landlord. My mom and dad couldn't, but I could. And I remember the lizards were just
iguanas.
Oh my gosh! Yeah. I mean,
they're an invasive species. They're not native, and the roadkill we see is generally iguana.
Oh my goodness!
You can actually go hunt them, so it's kind of fun.
Oh my gosh! I bet.
Yeah. And everybody loves it. I mean, the locals eat them too. I haven't tried it yet, but you can eat them.
My mom and dad said I'd get up 5 a.m. and go stay on the road waiting for the school bus. It was like the school bus wouldn't come for 2 hours, but I'd be out there waiting. And I thought, man, where did I go? I didn't do that in high school. I know that. Hey, but anyway, I need to kind of wrap this up, but I want to mention one story that was in the Wall Street Journal. And I showed your buddy Cole about the story, but about your dad and something about a house over in on the West Coast, man.
Yes.
And I've heard a lot about this, and it was in the Wall Street Journal, so I don't know how much information I don't want private information, but just I know your dad bought a house, and there was something about it was distressed or not distressed. Can you?
Yeah, I can tell the whole story. I mean, it's really simple. There's what, and this kind of comes back to something fundamental that we talked about at the beginning. Like, we all have to live together, and what are our obligations to each other? What do we owe each other? And in the case of this house, there's perhaps, you might say, what you could do and what you should do. So to tell the story, as briefly as possible, my dad, shortly after some very serious spinal surgery, went under contract to sell a house. A few days later, after, the pain meds he'd been taking had worn off, he said, I don't want to sell it. And the buyer, in this case, who was, Katy Perry, very famous pop star, perhaps not so talented, she did not want to relent. And she insisted on specific performance of the contract. And I thought from day one, I was like, this is pretty heartless and cruel. This is an 81-year-old man who had just undergone this serious surgery. And then, about a year later, within less than a year, he was permanently, in no longer able to care for himself. And he previously had a diagnosis of Huntington's disease, which, we could spend a whole episode on Huntington's disease, but suffice it to say, it's a genetic disease, and I'm not a carrier. My brother's not a carrier, so we won't have it, and our kids won't have it. Thank God. We just went through the whole trial, and we lost. But it doesn't, to me, change the fundamentals of the story, which is that she could have just bought another house. She didn't have to kick him out of his, and to not even care about what he was, wanted to do, to say, oh, I'm just going to get the house, just because I can. I'm going to put everybody through years of litigation just for that. That's very strange. It's a very odd way to operate. And, I've thought this, for a long time. It's the sort of story, like, it doesn't happen in Dallas. It doesn't happen in Texas.
Right.
People have a bit more respect for each other and for the elderly. And not to say we don't think contracts and such are sacred, like they are, but this was not a situation of hey, he's negotiating here or something. Like, no, he wanted to live there the rest of his life.
Right.
And, he probably still would be there if it weren't for them. So, it was a very painful and traumatic period for our family. The way that her people, her lawyers and her agents acted is absolutely the lowest moral conduct I have ever seen by any human beings anywhere. I won't even repeat some of the things they accused my brother and I of, or our family of. They're just absolutely ridiculous. But to say that they are Hollywood scum is being polite to scum.
Oh my gosh! Wow. No, sorry, I don't need to bring that up, so I ruin your day.
No. Look, I've been through so much with it that it's, I don't get emotional about it anymore. I've cried those tears already. Yeah. And believe me, I did cry because it was hurtful stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it was unbelievably hurtful stuff. What
a beautiful house in Santa Barbara, right?
That's right.
Santa Barbara. Beautiful house. I heard about the house a long time ago, and then I heard something about your dad wanted to sell, and then I heard something about that, and then I opened up my favorite newspaper, and I still get it. I didn't bring it today, but I still read literally the paper. Yeah. And Marcus Spears' daughter came up to me one day, and she goes, "Mr. Young, you can get that online." I go, "I know, Miko." But anyway, this is, I like reading the paper. And I was reading through, and Friday's a good section because they have the big mansion section in the Wall Street Journal on Fridays. And I open it up, and it's on the top half of the section. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. I mean, then you read through the story, and you're just feeling so bad for you and your family and having to go through all the trauma. And that's something he doesn't need to deal with. I mean, he does not need to deal with that, this late in his life, and unfortunate for there, but
it hasn't been fun to spend, kind of, I don't know how long he has left. I mean, only God knows.
Yeah.
But to spend any amount of time on this, when you're in your 80s, is horrible.
Yeah.
So it's been terrible for our family.
Yeah.
And she caused it, and we blame her 100%.
Absolutely. 100%. 100%. Sorry to hear that. Tell your dad I said hello, man, or if he's listening, which I hope he does listen to the Jay Young Show, but tell him
I'll have them play it for him. He'll enjoy it. He's not super cognizant of stuff, but he still recognizes me, of course.
Good. Well, I'm good. He doesn't recognize me. It's been a while. It's been, oh my goodness, 15 or 20 years, I guess.
You don't seem to age though. You've got a good health regimen, whatever.
Oh, great. Thank you. It's my wife. It's all about my wife. That's it. So
yeah.
I'm 61. He's 81. So I can't believe I'm 61. I just go, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? 61 years old. People like that when I was your age, looking at 61 years old, I'm like, they're ancient, man. These people.
Yeah.
I don't feel that way at all. I feel good. But Chart, I'll tell you what, I've got to wrap it up. Is there anything in particular you want to close with, or any, what if you'd have done something different in your life, or what would you tell a 20-year-old Chart Westcott, or close me up here with a great quote of the day, or a great summary of what you'd like to see different, or if there was. I love this show to teach people about, hey, this is what you could do if you want biotech. Go to Chart Westcott on Instagram, learn more about it. Or if you're, so kind of give me a.
Jay, I'm a big picture, high level guy, and the advice I would give to a 20-year-old is orient yourself first, because we live in very disorienting times. Things are changing fast. And what is tech today is literally obsolete tomorrow. And so you need to figure out where you are and where you think we are going. And then skate, as Wayne Gretzky famously said, skate to where the puck will be. And there's a lot of opportunity to do that right now, because everybody's got an opinion on where the puck's going. And so orient yourself, and figure out what your skills are, and understand that what you want to be and what you're capable of being are not always the same thing. And you have to have that honest conversation with yourself a lot. And so, that's the kind of the way I view the world right now. Is I'm still trying to skate to where I think the puck's going to be.
Hey, is AI going to be the next biggest thing or whatever? Is that where people need to look at? I
mean, I think it already is.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's literally eating the world. Software is eating the world. There's an Elon quote, I think, about 2 trillion human words are spoken every day by human beings, and 100 or 200 billion words are being generated right now online every day.
Wow.
And so at a certain point, the amount of human words being generated is going to be exceeded by computers, and I don't think we're very far from that. And so to the extent that those words reflect intelligence, then synthetic intelligence will be bigger than human intelligence.
Right.
So anyway, we could all go down this rabbit hole a very long time, but you just got to think about what this kind of stuff's going to do to our civilization, and it's a big black hole, and there's a lot of possibilities.
Right. Man, great. That's awesome. What great information here, everybody. I really appreciate you, Chart, being on the show today. It's been great. We've learned a lot. And anything, Chart Westcott on Instagram is the best way to get a hold of you or to talk.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Just sign up there, and I have a little. Just click the link, and you can get all my deal flow. And so it's as varied as a restaurant I am doing down here to commit to help with the local population. When I've got a deal coming out soon on fusion power. So of interest perhaps to the oil and gas community as a hedge.
Yeah. All right, great. That's awesome. We appreciate you, and appreciate you being on the show and all the things that you do. And if you're going to be in Puerto Rico anytime soon, be sure to go by his restaurant and connect with him. Sure, I'd love to sit and talk and make new relationships and make sure you reach out. So everybody, thank you so much for listening today to the Jay Young Show. We're going to have a great guest next week. Not sure who it is yet, but I've got I got some people that are incredible that I've lined up that's in my community that I want you to listen to. So thank you for being here today. Chart, thank you for being here and teaching us a lot about biotech and just lifestyle in Puerto Rico, and do appreciate that. So thank you, everybody. Until next week. Thank you.